he was going to join us from the mainland, but I don't think he's going to make it, or he might be chiming in later. So why don't we get started? Thank you everyone for coming to our monthly Economic Development Committee meeting. Keith did ask IFA Director Doug Simons to kind of update us on all the fantastic things that's been happening in astronomy and some of the not so great things. But hopefully he won't get you down too much, because astronomy, there's been a lot of good things happening in astronomy, and you know, we cannot lose sight of that. So I'll punt it to Doug, and take it away, man.
Okay, I am troubleshooting my computer in the background in real time. Let's see how this works out. Eventually, whatever's clogging up my internet will clear itself out. The genesis of this presentation was 2 glasses of red wine at the Lyman Museum Business After Hour, where Keith asked me, oh, by the way, can you cover at the next EDC meeting with a little astronomy update? And I've always got material on standby anyway. So I wasn't sure what to present. I just pulled some slides out of a briefing I gave the new Mauna Kea Stewardship and Oversight Authority. I thought that some of the most germane of interest for this group include TMT. I get a lot of questions about that, including at the airport where I spend way too much time, and new land authorization, given the change in management that's occurring. So with that as a disclaimer of my presentation, which probably is going to come out a little, for some reason, a little herky-jerky. Let me go ahead and share. Alrighty, and that's a nice shot of the Milky Way looking over what we call sub-millimeter valley at nighttime, actually towards Hilo. Hilo, the green lights are in the lower right-hand side there of Hilo. Little overview initially, just to give everybody some perspective, and I like to show these first few slides to kind of newcomers to Mauna Kea astronomy, be it federal agencies or members of the community in general. So this is a Google shot overhead, satellite shot of the observatories, about a dozen or so of them in the central summit region. VLBA is about 3,000 feet lower the Mauna Kea access road. And number to keep in your back pocket, so to speak, is you're looking at about $1 billion of hardware if you were to try and replace it today. Somewhere between 500 and 600 jobs that are direct employment opportunities for Hawaii Island folks. The total number of jobs in the state is close to maybe 1,100. That includes all the facilities on Haleakala, which UH also manages that land, and IFA over, which is actually split between Manoa, where I'm headed back again for my 3rd time this week. Tomorrow, we have our offices at Pukolani and Hilo, where I'm right now. And then on Haleakala and Mauna Kea, quite a few facilities that we manage. The annual operating budget is about $75 to $80 million, and most of that is in the form of salaries for those staff members, and therefore the observatories are really a great aggregator of international money that is pumped directly into the economy through the staff's salaries. We also contract with over 100 contractors on the Big Island, and that accounts for a significant fraction of the $110 million annual income and impact that astronomy has. One of the cooler aspects of Mauna Kea observatories in particular is how spectacularly international the entire partnership is on Summit Mauna Kea, as represented by this sort of colorful collection of flags. If you ever go into Haleakala, the mid-level facility, and the sort of lobby area, you'll see all the flags on display. I don't know for sure, but I'm guessing this is the most international research complex in the state of Hawaii, and that really reflects the international importance that Mauna Kea has for ground-based astronomy worldwide. And I also like to point out that a lot of the countries that you see represented here by these flags aren't necessarily on good terms. But they, in the science community, that is seldom an issue, though we will on occasion have to remove the Taiwanese flag from the display at HP if we have a Chinese delegation who don't necessarily like to see that. Otherwise, everybody's flag is on full display of HP to kind of admire the incredible international reach that Mauna Kea Astronomy has with federal funding agencies around the world paying for all this. They're also, as I say here, an important bridge to the community. Those of you who know me know that I really dedicate a lot of my time and attention to trying to be that bridge. I speak in both languages, so to speak. I speak with the engineers and the scientists in Hawaii astronomy and the community just as easily. And for me, it's really easy to try and map back and forth between those two. As an example, yesterday I was down at Waikea High School a couple times. The latter time is Dale Olive, who some of you know is a teacher there. He's actually going to retire this year, and asked me to, if I knew anybody who could help out with a 10th grader who wants to be a welder. She's going to find some opportunities over in Waimea this summer to do that. So I get a kick out of just connecting, in particular, students to opportunities at the observatories. The remarkable research achievement that is sustained year after year by those telescopes I just showed you before is captured in this graphic. Along the x-axis along the bottom, those are all essentially acronyms for co-located observatory complexes around the world. MKO, of course, that's Mauna Kea, and then VLT, that's the sort of the complement to Mauna Kea observatories in Chile on Paranal. And then you see other telescopes represented here. The y-axis is something called science impact, and that is essentially the number of peer-reviewed papers based upon data from these co-located observatories multiplied by their citations. So it's kind of a mouthful. But in simple terms, you score high in this metric if you either publish a lot of papers or you publish high quality papers. And I like that metric because it gives everybody kind of a shot at scoring high. And our county, year after year, is the most scientifically productive by this metric observatory complex in the entire world by a considerable margin. In fact, we outperform Hubble Space Telescope by the same metric year after year. And keep in mind that there are lots and lots of observatory complexes that aren't even on this chart that just don't even the cut in any sense. So this is something that we should be really proud of. This would not be possible without a lot of you don't understand the history of the chamber's involvement in starting Hawaii astronomy 50 plus years or so ago. The ability of the community and the university to sustain this, to attract that kind of international prestige and investment in this scientific endeavor. And it's a completely unique distinction in a lot of ways that we all have in Hawaii thanks to astronomy. I could go on and on about the various community benefits that the observatories provide. Another number sort of to keep in your back pocket, or at least I do when asked, is how much money per year is invested here on Hawaii Island in outreach. And it adds up to about $2 to $2.5 million per year. Most of that is in the form of about a dozen or so FTEs dedicated to working with schools, community organizations, a variety of other entities, be it county or state as well, to provide outreach opportunities and education opportunities, some of which are completely unique. My signature program is the Mauna Kea Scholar Program. Yesterday, we awarded observing time to 8 students at YK High School. The day before, Beth Lachek, who's in that picture, and I were at Waipahu High School, where we had a representative from the ledge there, and I believe we awarded 5 students time there. And tomorrow morning, Mary Beth and I will be at Kalani High School over at Oahu, where we'll be awarding more time. So these are completely unique opportunities for students to conduct their own research projects that are guided along by graduate students at the Institute for Astronomy as mentors. And these students get observing time on that set of telescopes, that billion-dollar sandbox, as I sometimes call it, to play in, where the entire universe is out there to explore. Facilities like Keck and Gemini they have a look-back reach of roughly 90% of the entire history of the universe. You can literally look over that volume of the universe with telescopes. That's powerful. So you can imagine the reaction of students and the opportunity that they have to use that. Also super proud lately, we have had a couple of press releases. One was for a student, Mallory Go, who just published with professional astronomers her Mauna Kea Scholar data set. It was of the so-called Horsehead Nebula in Orion. We've had about a half a dozen of these cases of the several hundred students who have received observing time. We're just exceptionally talented students. Mallory lives on Molokai, and you can imagine the reaction of the community in Molokai to have, their students to have access to these telescopes. She's now at Brown University, and the opportunity to work with professional astronomers around the world and get your research paper published in Astrophysical Journal, which is one of the most prestigious astronomy journals in the world, is a testament to the program and the caliber of students that we have in the state. The other one is a student at my schools that I've been mentoring throughout this school year. She placed first in physics and science in the science fair here in East Hawaii, placed first in physics and astronomy in the state fair, and this year she is in Dallas, Texas at the International Science and Engineering Fair, which is the largest science fair in the world, raising the flag for Hawaii Island through this program. So we had a lot of fun, a lot of success over the years with that. You see Journey Through the Universe, over 100,000 students, well over 100,000 over its history of received in-class or otherwise educational opportunities. Akamai is a super popular college internship program available for local college undergraduates. There have been something like 500 Hawaii County students that have participated over its history. About 150 have gone on to get STEM jobs in the state of Hawaii, and about 350 to 400 altogether if you count the continental U.S. So we are gearing up for another round of Akamai interns, about 3 dozen or so, but mostly they'll be scattered between Hawaii Island and Maui. And it's just got a tremendous success rate of getting students into STEM jobs in the state and elsewhere. So anyway, that's a handful of the programs that $2 to $2.5 million per year. Okay, so that's sort of the overview of science and sort of research capacity that we have professionally and otherwise. I wanted to give you an update on where we are with what I call generically land authorization for the Mauna Kea Science Reserve. So that's the 10,000 acres or so on the summit of Mauna Kea, in which the Mauna Kea observatories operate. Some of my goals in trying to drive all this forward is first and foremost to lay a good foundation for the future of astronomy, as I've shown it to you there. As I'll explain in a slide or two, that land authorization is set to expire in a decade, and the research, the educational opportunity, the economic benefit is all at risk if we're unable to find a new means of land authorization. It's going to be a complicated process. This takes a lot of my my bandwidth to try and keep up with it all. and drive it in hopefully a good direction. I've really taken a sort of an overarching role to float all the boats at once as I possibly can, recognizing that we will likely not have all the observatories survive this process, given anticipated increases in costs and complications with new land authorization. That's inevitable. So as I mentioned before, all the observatories on Mauna Kea, they are legally bound to be removed by the end of 2033 if we don't have new land authorization. Given the time to do that, which is we estimate roughly 5 years or so, that means we have about through 2028 to secure that land authorization. And that's a non-trivial process because the entity that will issue those new agreements legally today doesn't exist. It will exist starting July 1, but won't be able to actually issue leases until about 5 years. Until then, the existing so-called general lease to the University of Hawaii and the UH subleases to the telescopes remains in effect. I get the question a lot, is there some way to extend the lease? The short answer is not in a way that's useful. Sort of most obvious approach might be a one-year revocable lease extensions starting 2034. I am dubious to put the future of $1 billion research on the very uncertain set of circumstances with a bunch of revocable leases, though. That's a kind of a ridiculous way to sustain that complex. And as I say here, the future of the not only Hawaii astronomy, but a good fraction of global astronomy, as I showed you in that chart, really does lie in the hands of our local community. And your support and the broader support of the community is absolutely essential for this whole endeavor to go forward. So I packed a lot into this slide, and I've shown various incarnations of this to legislators. So we have Doug Adams on, so he probably recognizes that. I've shown it to the Mauna Kea Authority and others. And it's intended to kind of drill down in a very high level sense what is going to have to occur over the next decade or so to get that land authorization in place. So we are more or less right about in here, where the start of the new Mauna Kea Stewardship and Oversight Authority starts. They have a 5-year transition period to essentially open up shop, if you will. This is essentially a mini DLNR whose authority applies exclusively to the UH managed lands on Mauna Kea today. So this is a gigantic task to create an agency that fast and in a position that it can legally issue leases by the end of this transition period. Pleased to say that all the board members were confirmed by the Senate just a couple of weeks ago, I think. So we do have all 11 board members available to enter in this next phase right here. Up on top, these are some key points for the observatories and one of the big questions for the authority is how many telescopes will they allow to go forward on Mauna Kea? And if they determine that fewer telescopes are allowed through some process that I'm not prepared to go into today, we need to determine which ones do not go forward in this time span, so sort of a couple of years or so. That feeds into lease negotiations between the authority and the remaining observatories and their funding agencies scattered around the world. The intent being to be in a position that everything's ready to sign sort of as soon as legally possible, which is mid-2028. That would be fine if we didn't have this sort of looming issue with the existing master lease or general lease that legally commits all these observatories to be decommissioned in 5 years' time at this point. We fully expect that in this as fast as possible scenario that I painted for you here, contested cases and litigation to the Supreme Court will occur. And that leads to this rather disturbing conundrum in which we have observatories struggling between deciding about their legal commitment to decommission in parallel with the litigation phase of their new land authorization agreements. And ultimately, it's going to be up to the funding authorities that decide the amount of risk that they're willing to take in this whole process going forward. So I've stripped out lots and lots of details here, but this is just intended to give you a very high level sense of the flow of really big decisions like numbers of telescopes that can go forward. That leads into lease agreements, that leads into contested cases, and ultimately Supreme Court bound litigation that look to hopefully resolve this before we have issues with the 2033 deadline. And then one last slide, then I'll just open it up to questions for you. Because I know you're interested in TMT, everybody is. They did extremely well at their preliminary design review late last year and in January of this year. That's one of the many milestones that the NSF has for their decision-making process about funding TMT. So right now, NSF is evaluating their options to sponsor what we call the U.S. Extremely Large Telescope Program. So that's a combination of TMT and GMT, which is a 20-meter telescope that's proposed to go in Chile. The combination thereof would be operated as essentially a single observatory to give the U.S. astronomy community access to both north and southern skies. So there are lots and lots of what I call programmatic milestones that are just around the corner. For starters, when does NSF launch their federal EIS? And there's something called NEPA Section 106 for TMT as well. They have not announced this yet. Actually, I'm going to be at NSF next week, talk to them about TMT, and there's a question that will be in front of the new Mauna Kea Authority sometime this year to wrestle with, because I think the NSF will be looking to the new authority for guidance and input on how to start that process if they decide to go forward with it at all. And what level of authority support does NSF really need for all of this to go forward with their funding process, which is a parallel track? We're looking at somewhere north of $1 billion NSF will have to come up with to complete the construction of TMT, and that's assuming the existing partners in there. And then this is a looming one that's actually usurped at least two, in a sense. The University of Hawaii actually holds the TMT permit, their conservation district use permit. And what happens to that in the management transition I described before is unclear. And if TMT loses that permit or it's reopened for litigation, that will also introduce some complications for TMT going forward. The nearest term sort of interesting milestone is July 1, so right around the corner. And that's the point at which co-management, and I use that term in quotes because it's in Act 255, between UH and the new authority occurs. And that's a really basic question that both the university and the new authority need to discuss and define. Right now, the University of Hawaii has all the legal agreements and liabilities in place to manage the summit and the resources. And how big decisions are handled, like TMT, in this sort of co-management model is a really basic question. I'm fairly certain that next week at the UH Board of Regent meeting, this is going to come up. And going to drive all of this. So with that, mahalo for your attention. We're about half an hour into this, and I wanted to reserve the other half an hour for Q&A on anything, but I was guessing those were the most germane topics that people wanted to talk about, or at least hear about.
Doug, this is Alan Okinaka. I have a question. A couple of years ago, when you did a similar presentation, I asked you about technology transfer from the technology of, the astronomy science to everyday applications. Are there opportunities to do this?
Do you mean in general terms, or specifically in terms of royalties and patents? Slightly
Well,
different.
the only two things that I know has been transferred is that method that was developed where they would take noise signals and invert it to cancel out the noise and then see what the pure image is. And I think Dr. Hall was working on a very cold, I don't know what he called it, but he was very proud of it, where he could take temperatures down because you have better image capturing capability with low temperatures. And so those are the only two technologies I saw in application for everyday use. Are there other similar things like that that, you know, the astronomy group could brag about, such that
Yeah,
the general
yeah.
public will look at it and say, wow, there's a lot of benefits to what's happening?
Yeah, there are lots, and I've got a whole presentation on that because get asked this a fair amount. One of the most dramatic ones is one that you don't hear about until it's the most important thing in your life, and that is the Planetary Defense Program. That's a NASA term. The University of Hawaii has a leadership role in the world. That program uses a suite of telescopes that UH owns and operates to look for called near-Earth objects or asteroids, properly termed killer asteroids if they're impactors. So it's one of these quiet programs where UH is detecting more of these NEOs than any other observatories worldwide. You don't hear about it until you have a situation, and all of a sudden, this line of research is spectacularly important. The sort of two arms to this, the Pan-STARRS facilities have a deeper reach for looking for asteroids that you could potentially do something about, i.e. redirect before they arrive. We have at least a decade to go before we've mapped all the sort of 100-meter class and larger asteroids. Those are large enough to destroy a major city. They're not driving extinction. But if one were to impact over, say, Los Angeles or another major metropolitan area, it has the kinetic energy, the equivalent energy of several megaton nuclear warhead detonating overhead. So you obviously want to know that before they arrive. The other arm of the systems we operate is basically a 72-hour last chance for identifying objects smaller than that even that slip through the net, if you will, that I described earlier. And the point of that is you can, with surprising accuracy, project where on the Earth those objects will impact, and you can evacuate, in principle, towns and cities before and do anything about the object before it impacts. But you have time to evac. And there have been about 4 or 5 of those detected. Most of them have gone down over the ocean. So, you know, Alan, this is one of those cases where all of a sudden Hawaii astronomy is going to be like super important if we ever do have one of these impactors coming down over a populated area. Then the other example is all, you know, it's all contained in a cell phone, basically, in different ways. The imaging technology and the camera in this, these are MOS detectors. The sort of technical legacy of that goes back to astronomy with the first digital detectors ever used, replacing photographic film. You're old enough like me to know what I'm talking about. With that, that all is driven back in the 70s, in fact, at RCA with the very first digital imaging detector. And then a real popular application for your cell phone that I use all the time when I'm trying to figure out where in the hell I am in Honolulu is a GPS system in your phone. If you think about it, maps are all tied to some sort of a spatial fiducial. We live in a finite universe in a sense, and everything's connected positionally to everything else. The GPS system that we all sort of take for granted is ultimately tied in a spatial sense to about 200 supermassive black holes called quasars that are about 90% of the look-back age of the universe. And we use those as the most fixed objects that we can access and measure their relative positions because they're so far away that any motion in those objects is undetectable. So believe it or not, when you use your GPS on your phone, the math being done is traceable back to supermassive black holes that are being monitored by telescopes, including one on Mauna Kea. And this so-called celestial reference frame is the magic, if you will, that allows this technology to occur. So it's three real quick examples, and I give you lots more. But astronomy impacts your life in ways that isn't necessarily obvious until it's either too late, in a sense.
Now, why isn't there an effort to explain those things for the average person? I mean, you know, what you explained, you need quite a lot of knowledge about the science of astronomy and the science of cell phones and everything like that. And the first one, I tell you, if a huge asteroid is heading for Earth, I would rather, in fact, instead of evacuating, I would rather get a good glass of Hibiki Harmony and sit on the easy chair and listen to my favorite music instead of running away from it, because I know that's going to wipe out most of the Earth. So, you know, what the heck?
It depends on the size.
Well, yeah, of course, it depends on the size, but I'm just giving an example of what people, an average person would think about.
Right, and that's why I like to give a sort of a spectrum of applications where I think everybody can relate to killer asteroids. And I think in general, people understand they use their phone for navigating or their car, but have no idea that the system that they're being used is ultimately tied to the sky as fiducial reference.
So can something like this be done where you could, I hate to use the phrase dumb down, but that's really what it is. You got to bring it down to the third grade level where somebody can read it and say, wow, there's a lot of benefit from this. You know, when I visited the Technology Transfer Museum at the Kennedy Space Center, I could see how the materials they develop help people with prosthetic legs and arms. The management of launching a rocket became a business model for a lot of businesses. The heat shielding for the front of their thing for capsule coming down was used for a lot of super insulation for everyday, you know, keeping things cold and stuff like that. So that's what I kind of mean. For me to listen to the screen on your cell phone, be it connected to astronomy, I got to really stretch my mind to say, wow, I see the connection. I got to be honest, I don't see the connection right now.
All right, well, offline, I'll reestablish the connection. I think the point is that there are numerous practical applications for technologies that have their roots in astronomy. They include CT scanners, the algorithms used to measure the fluid structure within your eye. That's uses something called tomography that has mathematical roots back in astronomy. So there are lots and lots of examples. I think the core question you're asking is, how do you get this information out there? That gets back to the finite amount of resources that we have. It'd be great if we had more, a couple $1 million, and we have focused that more on our kids and education and workforce development than popularizing astronomy to the general public. That's a choice that we made, and
Alan, you really think people in the community would really appreciate a dumbed down picture of what has just been presented?
I would. And I hate to use the word dumbed down, but what it just simply
I know you do, but
explain things in a very simple way. Our media right now will write to impress, not to express. So, a lot of times you read an article and you got to read it about 10 times before you really get to understand what they're saying. And that has to change so that you can read it one time and understand what the issues are or what they're trying to describe.
Well,
anyway, that's my thing, is to take all the things that have been developed in astronomy and explain it in such a way that the average person will be able to understand the benefits of astronomy. Thank you, Doc.
No, I take your point. I get that a lot. So it's a good point. Very
It is
common.
a good point.
What good is it for?
Yeah. Good presentation.
Other questions? It's a quiet group. I haven't done an EDC meeting in 2 years, I think. I used to chair this.
Do you hand out or download? Can we download the slide presentation or?
Yeah, I think Miles, is this being recorded?
Yeah, this is being recorded, so
So you can provide that to people.
Okay,
sure, be happy to.
Then you have the
All right.
word with the slides.
I appreciate it. Yeah,
Just get back to me if you have questions. If you look at the repeat, see,
Huh.
see if there's something you're concerned about. Well, we have two Mauna Kea Authority board members on with us, namely Bonnie and Doug, unless I'm missing somebody. So they can chime in as well on where they see things, what are the front and center topics that the authority
Yeah, thanks, Doug, number one. I think the thing I would mention, first of all, appreciate Doug providing this presentation to the Hawaii Island Chamber. He and I were, as Miles knows, on West Hawaii for the Kona Chamber, I don't know, 2-3 months ago, a panel that dealt with astronomy. I would say, this will likely embarrass him, I will say that afterwards, everybody said the astronomy panel was best. It had nothing to do with the other 4 members. It had everything to do with as far as the Mauna Kea Stewardship and Oversight Authority is concerned, the development of an agency at the state level, probably almost anywhere, from scratch, is not an insignificant endeavor. And so we have, particularly when we are subject to sunshine law requirements. So it is, we've been able to at least develop our internal rules of procedures, and are in the process of hiring initial support, because up to this point, it's been the board members and a couple of volunteers plus a deputy AG to serve as our legal advisor. And then we've been very fortunate with Greg Chun out of Center for Mauna Kea Stewardship and Doug Simons have been willing to provide their time and expertise to update us and keep us understanding, what the challenges are facing us. The timeline is incredibly fast. People look at 5 years and they think, well, that's nothing, but 5 years is to do what we're expected to do, as Doug mentioned, is going to be incredibly difficult, as well as, and that's just to get to the point where we're talking about the leases. That has nothing to do with the management, has nothing to do with setting up the organization and the transition between CMS and the Mauna Kea Stewardship and Oversight Authority, which it's kind of like a merger and acquisition. And so we have all of that to kind of work our way through. So, and of course, everybody that's on the board has, other things that they do. So I would say that that this particular position, I made this point for the West Hawaii Chamber as well. This particular position there are the governor appointees, and then there are 4 ex officio positions. One for the the chair of DLNR, the BLNR, or designee, one for the chair of the UH Regents or designee, and one for the mayor of the County of Hawaii or designee, which is the position that I hold. And then Chancellor Irwin has the other ex officio position. The three first ones that I mentioned are voting members, and then Chancellor Irwin's position is non-voting. This position from the county is the very first time that the county has a direct legal connection to what are have been up to this point state-related responsibilities and concerns. Everything that the county has done prior to this has been either through the bully pulpit, or in the case of providing some degree of law enforcement support in support of state agencies that have responsibility. So we now have a seat at the table, so to speak, for the county. And so we'll see where that kind of goes as well, because it's a first time for us to do that. Chancellor Irwin?
I wanted you to go first because you got the vote. I don't. So yeah, the only things I would add to the laundry list of folks that Doug said have been kind of helping out during this transition phase. Emi Loa is currently providing administrative assistance. They're setting up the Zoom rooms and helping with all of that. And so you might, as you might imagine, I'm anxious for the authority to get its own staff so that I can have all of my folks back. And then of local interest, I think, one of the things that I will need to bring to the authority as soon as appropriate is the UH Hilo Teaching Telescope. And as many of you know, we are decommissioning the site at the summit. And there is no instrument there, it's just a dome, but we have an instrument here on campus that we would like to install at Halepohaku. But we are going to have to send it through the authority as well as any UH channels. We've done some of the work, but we're kind of in a holding pattern now, waiting to see where we go next. And so personally, that's something that I'm a little bit anxious to be one of the first things the authority deals with, but I also don't want it to become a lightning rod either.
Yeah.
So I will be kind of taking the temperature of the authority and the various members and deciding when to approach Chair Komeji about that project. But otherwise, yeah, my impressions align absolutely with Doug's, that we've been mostly doing things like just setting up the infrastructure so that we can actually do the work come July, because everyone has been approved, but we don't formally take office as an authority until July 1st. And so the attorneys had said that, we're in a safe space doing this logistical stuff, getting ready to hire staff, but we were discouraged for doing anything substantive until everyone was fully confirmed and the authority was official. The other thing that has happened is in the ledge session that just ended, the legislature did approve the budget and some positions for the authority. So we will have the ability to move forward, which is an important piece of all this.
I would make the comment, and this is Adam's personal opinion. So far, the authority board is working well. We haven't had to deal with huge issues, though, as Chancellor Irwin mentions, really. And so it's going to be interesting to see how we kind of tackle as individual board members that have constituencies that have led to their, nomination and ultimately their confirmation. As well as, of course, the ex officio members that have their own organizations that are part of the statute or the statutory seating. That probably is as far as I can go. So, thank you.
I totally agree with Bonnie that the teaching telescope actually could be the first test particle in the chamber. We'll measure the physics of that at a point that I think is sooner rather than later. I certainly detect, without going into details, more and more interest and pressure to address the TMT question. Need necessarily the authority to have all their administrative infrastructure in place. This is essentially a astro-political question. Do you want to do TMT or not? If it's a no, that's one bit of information. If it's a yes, well, there's a ton of other things that have to occur before TMT could ever get built. So, these will be challenges that I think you'll see sooner rather than later in the whole process. Since Bonnie mentioned decommissioning, just an update. We're anticipating the removal of CSO, Caltech's millimeter observatory. This summer, there's been some newspaper articles in White Trib lately about that. I believe there'll be some dry runs of the wide load convoy that they're going to assemble in about maybe 4 to 6 weeks, going from the summit all the way down to Kauai High Port before they remove the telescope. That telescope is destined to be redeployed in Chile, and then they will deconstruct the enclosure. That'll go very fast, and site restoration will follow that as well. So I think the odds are pretty good that by the end of this year, Hokulea and CSO will be completely removed from Mauna Kea.
Hey, Doug, got a question. With all the outreach that IFA and the Mauna Kea observatories have been doing, with stuff like Astro Day, have you folks noticed a noticeable or any shift in communities' feelings towards astronomy and TMT? Have you heard anything?
We have our own surveys, and I feel pretty well grounded in saying the community broadly supports astronomy and the existing observatories. TMT is kind of a lightning rod unto itself.
Mm-hmm.
You'll find a bit more discrepancy there. Generally, I think there is support for TMT, but there's no question in my mind that there's broad support for the existing observatories on Mauna Kea within the community. You always want more, so to speak, but given the resources that we have and the complexities of the issues, I feel very confident when I'm in public speaking mode in front of almost any crowd, realizing that most of the people in the crowd, for the most part, are generally supportive of the Mauna Kea observatories. So, in other words, I haven't seen it shift that much, Miles, because we've been doing this for a long time, and I think there's always been pretty strong support.
Good. Thank you.
And I would add that, Feng Shuan Yu has really made every attempt to be part of this community. His whole attitude toward what it means to be TMT here on island and in Hilo is 180 degrees different than his predecessors. Whether or not he's changing minds, I don't know, but I appreciate the way he is going about things to really be of the community and not just sort of dropping in and handing out things and expecting that everything will go well.
Right. Yeah, Feng Shuan's doing something.
If I could just interject, I met Feng Shui about 2 or 3 weeks ago on some other matters concerning TMT. And yes, I think he's making a pretty good dent in the community in terms of how he's reacting and responding to the concerns of the community. That's from, if you will, the bottom up to the top. And I think his whole attitude has helped him provide a better outlook on what's going on. But more importantly, I think he's derived an enormous amount of understanding of what's going on. He's gone down to the absolute details, so he has a pretty good view on how people are reacting to this. So, yeah, it's good that he's along, and you're right about the. No, I won't say anything more. I was going to say something about the predecessor, but I won't. Anyway, that's my call on it, right?
Any other questions for Doug, Bonnie, or Doug? Doug? Okay. Well, thank you very much, Doug,
Okay.
and Bonnie. We got to figure this out better. But I appreciate it,
Kelsey,
Doug.
just call him LeBron. Just call him LeBron. We'll be happy.
No, we have to go there.
I guess there's time to throw in a commercial. If you haven't heard, we are having our last business hour after hours of the year, of Doug's year. This month on the 25th, it'll be a Zoom Scotch whiskey tasting event and general membership meeting. We tried to get totally different type of subjects together, and we were able to do a general membership meeting and Scotch tasting. As you guys know, or many of you know, Doug's a real Scotch aficionado. So we'll be featuring 4 of Doug's favorites Scotches. Samples can be picked up a couple days before the event from the chamber office.
Wow.
You can sign up online at our website. And it's it'll be a Pauhana one from 5:30 to 7:30. After that, in June on the 29th, we're having our installation dinner. Information still got to go out on that one, but just wanted to give you a heads up and kind of save the date. That one will be at the yacht club. Okay, so if not, if nobody has anything.
Oh, good timing. Get to go on my 1 o'clock meeting.
We'll see you guys next month on the 8th. Notices will be going out. Thanks, everybody. Thank you, Doug.
Thank
Aloha.
you.
Aloha, aloha kako.